Hello, this is Colin Liddell, and this is the Shortpod, a brief and succinct podcast commenting on the events and issues of the day. And today it is the 8th of May, 2022. Recently, there were council elections in the United Kingdom, and I would like to talk about this rather dull topic to shine a little light on the British political system and how it works. At the same time as the council elections in many parts of England, Scotland and Wales, there was also an election for the Northern Irish Assembly. Now, the main headline from all these elections was that the Sinn Féin party had become the largest party in the Northern Irish Assembly. A lot of people saw that as evidence that Northern Ireland was increasingly moving away from the United Kingdom as some sort of reaction possibly to Brexit, or merely as a reflection of the rising Catholic demographic. But that's a rather overwrought narrative. There's almost no possibility of Northern Ireland, Scotland or Wales breaking away from the United Kingdom. This is not because the United Kingdom doesn't have centrifugal forces pulling it apart, but because the British political system is cunningly designed to cope with those centrifugal forces. Now, about 30 years ago or so, the United Kingdom was a heavily centralised country. Welsh affairs and Scottish affairs were completely decided in London. After 1997, with the election of the Labour government of Tony Blair, there was a certain amount of devolution. Also, there was a Northern Irish peace process that allowed Northern Irish politics to be unfrozen and come back into existence. So, during the time of Tony Blair, the United Kingdom became a more kind of decentralised entity with the Scottish Parliament, which I think dates from 1999 or 2000, and the Welsh Assembly and a revived Northern Irish Assembly. Now, these regional parliaments, on the face of it, looked like the United Kingdom was slowly drifting apart. But the opposite was the case. These regional parliaments were all designed to strengthen the long-term unity of the United Kingdom. Now, how were they to do this? Well, quite simply, they were designed to fail. Now, the Westminster Parliament, the main political institution of the United Kingdom, is designed to succeed. And how is this so? Because the Westminster Parliament is a first-past-the-post system, which means that the leading party in the country doesn't need to have an absolute majority of the vote to have a working majority in Parliament. For example, the present government, I think it has barely over 40% of the vote, but that's enough to give it, almost 60% of the members of Parliament. So whichever party manages to take power in Westminster usually does so without having to win the majority of the vote. Now, this is not the case in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. In those regional parliaments, representation is decided by various forms of proportional representation. It would be rather tedious and technical to go into the exact details, but it's not a first-past-the-post system. So what this means is that it's almost impossible for any one party to dominate those parliaments. The closest that anybody has ever come to dominating one of those parliaments is the Scottish National Party at the last Scottish parliamentary elections in 2021. In that election, the SNP had to score an extremely high vote. In fact, they almost got 50% of the constituency vote. They got a bit less of the regional vote. But even with a very, very high vote, a vote that would have ensured them a landslide victory under the Westminster system, they were just under 50% of the seats. And that's a high water mark for the SNP. they're very, very unlikely to ever repeat that kind of showing again. In the case of the Scottish Parliament, even though the SNP are able to rule with the help of the Green Party, in the years ahead, the inbuilt dysfunctionality of the Scottish Parliament is going to increasingly show, and the result of that will be that the Scottish Parliament will be very, very divided and nobody will be able to have an overall majority. This will make the Scottish Government very, very weak vis-à-vis Westminster. Now, what I'm saying about the Scottish Government is even more true in the case of Wales and Northern Ireland. In Northern Ireland, the real story is not the Sinn Féin being the largest party, because they didn't even win any extra seats. The real story there is the Alliance Party gaining 9 seats. The Alliance Party is a non-sectarian party. It's not unionist and it's not nationalist. It doesn't stand for independence and it doesn't stand for unionism, but it stands for the status quo, which is, of course, remaining within the United Kingdom. So rather than Northern Ireland becoming increasingly Catholic and nationalist and wanting to break away from the United Kingdom and join the Republic of Ireland, Northern Irish politics is going to be very, very divided between various small parties. The same is true in Scotland and the same is true in Wales. And the reason for that is because all of these parliaments, all of these regional assemblies, they are run on a much higher degree of proportional representation than Westminster. Now, the first past the post system favours a two-party style of politics, which is what we see in England, where most of the contest was between Labour and Conservatives. So most of the councils in England are either run by Labour or by Conservatives. There is a kind of third party, the Liberal Democrats, but the Liberal Democrats do not really represent a third option. They represent more of a complement to the two-party system. So, for example, in deeply Labour territory, the Liberal Democrats are seen as an acceptable alternative to Labour. Rather than people swinging all the way from Conservative to Labour or from Labour to Conservative, the Liberal Democrats provide them with a kind of halfway house, so they don't have to go all the way across the political spectrum, which for various cultural reasons they find much easier to do. So somebody who's middle class in the south of England, who's dissatisfied with the Conservative Party, they're not quite comfortable voting for what they see as a essentially working class northern party. So they might be much happier voting for the Liberal Democrats. Somebody in the north, in a working class area, who's not happy with Labour, they would be quite reluctant to vote Conservative for cultural reasons. So they then might vote Liberal Democrat. So Liberal Democrat, it's not really a third party, it's more like a complement to the two-party system. And England is very much a two-party political culture. Now, with the two-party political culture and the first past-the-post system at Westminster, that means that you have majority government in London, whereas in Cardiff, Belfast and Edinburgh, you have these PR-based regional party governments that are essentially built to fail. So that gives London the whip hand over the Celtic fringe, so to speak. But it also has an interesting side effect, which might actually become deeply problematic in the years ahead. One of the most interesting points about the Scottish council elections is that almost every single council in Scotland has no majority party. This is not just a problem for the Scottish Parliament, it's a problem in every single council area in the land. Scotland has 32 council areas. Only in 2 of those council areas are there majority administrations. Dundee City was won by the Scottish National Party, and they're the majority there. And I think Dumbartonshire West was won by the Labour Party, and they are the majority there. But in all 30 of the other Scottish council areas, you effectively have no overall control, which basically means that when things go wrong in those councils, when things are mismanaged, when mistakes are made, it's going to be very, very difficult to find someone to blame. If you live in somewhere like Dundee, you have the SNP in power. So if the services are very poor, if the local tax is too high, you can blame them, you can chuck them out. But in almost every other Scottish council, you're not really sure who's in charge. So this means that politics in Scotland, thanks to this kind of multi-party system, is becoming increasingly dysfunctional. And more importantly, this is all by design. This didn't just happen accidentally. The Scottish political system, along with that of Wales and Northern Ireland, these were all designed to malfunction. And the reason for that is London, even though they had to kind of concede some devolution, they didn't want to concede any real power. And this is how the United Kingdom manages to stay together, through the trickery of the mandarins in Westminster. Over and out.